Hey guys, it's Drek. This is a Southeast style slug. I'm putting that into an 18-inch CPVC barrel, which is actually a speed loader. And this is way too much barrel for this blaster. It only shoots about 85 feet with this setup, which is just a testament to how tough this is in its stock form. Anyway, as most of you know, this is a crossbow. This is my crossbow, and this is the condition I received it in. It's got this it's a well-applied orange paint job, which means that it's going to take forever for me to sand off, but it's not very clean. Plus, I don't really like the orange on the crossbow, so I'm going to gut this entirely and start repainting it, breaking down, and adding homemade internals to it. When I'm done, I want this to shoot harder and further than my pump snap. And I've got a name all picked out for her, so this should be a very cool blaster. Without any further ado, I'm going to show you the internals as they are now, and then I'll start breaking it down for painting. Alright, so I've removed all the screws that were in this crossbow, and now I can butterfly it into its two halves. You can see here that the coupler on these internals is attached with epoxy and then spray painted black, and that black is bleeding through all over the original yellow that the plunger tube was. I still have the original trigger and catch, which is good because I'm going to need both of those. I'm trying to remove the internals now. Let me lock in and do that. They kind of lock into these ridges in the shell, which you can see right there and there. And again, I think that you leave most of those intact. The catch is pretty solid, although I've been told it needs to be reinforced, and I'm going to need a much tougher catch spring for the internals I plan on putting in it. This is the trigger and its return spring. It looks like it's already showing some signs of wear up on the top, so I'll probably reinforce that as well. And then the plunger itself is actually in pretty decent shape. It needs some lubrication, but again, I won't be reusing this. Crossbow springs in their stock form are actually very tough. I want to say that they're almost as tough as a K25. They're very powerful. And then the priming bar here is also very comfy. Again, I'll probably be scrapping most of these internals with the exception of this catch, and I'm going to take the trigger and maintain it. Now I need to start sanding and prepping this to turn it into my super cool new primary. Okay, so you guys can see that the base coat and new techniques for the Lilith has been an incredible success. I got a very nice gunmetal finish. Now it's nowhere near complete, but it is raining today, so I figured I'd start on the reinforcements. You might have noticed that this is sheet brass. It's very heavy duty sheet brass, and this is my first tracing of a reinforcement. I believe I need to make 4 of these, and that's going to be tricky. This specifically goes in here for the plunger rests to withstand the massive amount of force that these internals I plan on putting in will have to sustain. And then the most important reinforcement will be the one that goes here. Let me flip on my light. Yes, these go here, and they'll be the reinforcements for the plunger tube itself to rest against. And then I'll need a much larger one here because this is actually the spring rest right before the catch mechanism, which is here. So this one needs to be reinforced very securely. These need light reinforcements, and I'm going to need to start dremeling out this area to integrate something very cool. Hey guys, it's Drek, and this is the base coat for the Lilith with all of my painting tape on it. I'm going to do a full 360 so that you can see where I've hit it with the painter's tape, and now it's time to lay down about 4 coats of Fanger Red before I peel this tape off. Alright guys, so here's the Lilith. I'm sorry for the delay, but my schoolwork had to take priority. It's got all of its internals functional. These are completely homemade internals. They've got a lot more power, as well as a full K26 inside and a built-in dart stop. I've reinforced all the parts so that this will never ever break. The reinforcements are mostly mirrored like this, but they're full brass reinforcements. They're very tough and they were very difficult to make. I've also reinforced the trigger with brass so that it shoots a little further and the trigger doesn't have to be pulled completely flush, and it's also much stronger and will never break. I did cover the brass with epoxy, let that cure for a full week. I did that so the brass would not generally cut a groove into the catch mechanism itself. which has also been reinforced. This has been locked down. All the functional internals are now in place. The only other thing worth mentioning is this screw port was shot entirely, so I did drill through it. Now I will be reinforcing the shell with these. Apologies for the mess, there's a little bit of dust from some internals carving. But these are 8x32 2-inch screws. They're made of zinc. They're recommended by Nerfomania, who's made an excellent crossbow and reinforced his with similar things. I'm very glad that he helped me kind of pick out the parts I was going to use. I did pick out my own miniature rubber washers, which are a little too tight, but I like that because it'll reinforce and help stick. I also have some nylon lock nuts. Let me find those. Those are the best way to secure these. Here they are. These are also sized for 3/18. They're nylon lock nuts. They're very sturdy. They'll make sure that things don't move over repeated firing. And they're also the kind that I use for robotics, so I'm comfortable using those. These are zinc washers. I thought that they'd mesh well with the zinc screws, and you need metal washers to... Metal washers are for strength, and then rubber washers are to keep from damaging the shell in the paint job. So I got enough for all three of the ports where I'm going to put those. You'll see those in the final shell, but I wanted to show you very clearly all of the parts that I used. I think it's very important if you ever wanted to replicate this that you have the parts list. So without further ado, I'm going to put the shell together and get it functional, and then I'll show you a final segment after I finish the... Hey guys, it's Drac, and this is the long-awaited, finally finished blaster. This is the Lilith in its final form. I sealed the gap around the custom internals as much as I possibly could. I'm honestly completely happy with the way this turned out. I think that this is as much gap filling as I could get. There's a little bit of stress on the plastic here because you have to have this closed for the catch mechanism and this open as much as possible to accommodate the internals. But this is the most powerful crossbow that I think I've ever seen at an NIC war, and I have the pleasure of making it and creating it myself, which is just a ton of fun. I don't think that anything shy of like an Expo or a Pump Snap competes with it. I did take it to Nomine where I competed about half the day with this. I split the time between the Pump Snap and the Lilith, and it performed like a champion. It was just a phenomenal primary to use, and I was really pleased with the performance and the looks. All the compliments I got all day, I just really like it a lot. I think it's very cool. Now, there was a lot of work in sinking these bolts to get everything accommodated. I did have to put one through a non-port hole here just to lock down that catch mechanism so it works. I honestly don't mind the bolts. It gives it a little bit of an industrial feel, and I don't think it detracts away from the paint job because the paint job is obviously gunmetal and Fanger red with a black trigger because I like the black trigger and it matches the custom barrel I made for it. It's a very comfortable shell, very comfortable stock. The prime is very comfortable, and the amount of power it delivers is just phenomenal. I think that this is a very effective homemade and regular mod blaster, kind of hybrid. It's homemade internals and a comfortable shell, so I think that in a lot of ways this is the best of both worlds. It's certainly one of my favorite mods I've ever completed and competed with. I'm just really happy with how everything turned out. The Draculina did the detailing because you guys always give me grief about how my detailing is awful, and I think that that's fair in a lot of ways, but I'm happy about how the paint job turned out, how clean it was, how it overlaps that orange paint job that was here. This is the custom barrel that I'm using for it. I used 4 different types of adhesive, and I know it's a little rough, but I honestly don't mind. I painted the entirety of the crossbow arms, and then I grafted them onto a Y, so it does use a hopper clip. This top of the hopper here, I had Nerfomania make for me because nobody does a better job. He puts these ball caps on the top, and then down here it is mechanically fastened, so I just pop this off, throw my darts in, and lock it back on. Couldn't be easier. It's really cool. These are very stable. I know that they're a little flimsy in the stock form. The actual barreling is PVC wrapped in E-tape with a foot of brass in the center, so it's 17/32 brass. It fits very well with the Southeast lugs. These are open for integrations in the future, but it's mostly here because I like that it looks like a crossbow still. In my opinion, the main thing that's wrong with a lot of crossbows is that when people mod them, they no longer look like crossbows. They look like some sort of sleek shark thing, but now it actually looks like a crossbow. You know it's a crossbow. If you're going to use something vintage, you should get all of your vintage credit out of it. I think that it's one of the coolest looking crossbow mods that's ever been done, and I'm just really pleased with how it turned out. I can't say that enough. Since I'm rambling, I'm going to go outside and do a full shot of the Lilith, and I'll fire it off 4 times because it does have a 4-dart hopper. Southeast style slugs, hopper holds 4. That's it. It's about 120 feet.